Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. So where are we headed today?
The place we're headed to today briefly declared itself an independent nation in 1846, known as the Bear Flag Republic, for one whole month.
Texas.
No.
California.
This place has had some unusual laws.
California.
They once had the ugly law. It made it illegal for people deemed unsightly to appear.
Florida.
They also had a toad licking law. It is officially illegal to lick a toad. They also had a car cleaning law. It's illegal to wipe one's car down with used underwear.
Still Florida.
This place's official bird is the valley quail.
Nevada?
Today, we'll be in good old California.
I guess California like 15 times.
I know it. You said it like 3, 4.
Round it up.
It was hard to find hints that we haven't used in an abundance. But, and for those laws, the ugly law, that was San Francisco. It's been removed. The toad licking law, that's in Los Angeles. The car cleaning one, can't use dirty panty or used panties to clean your car. That's also San Francisco. In case you were curious.
You're very excited about that. Is it because you're just tired of everybody wiping their cars down in Virginia with their dirty underwear?
No, it made me think of you. It made me think of you because you used to tell me to shit on my boy's car because he'd leave the toilet clogged.
Would have solved things. Giving out quality advice.
Quality, atrocious. Anyway.
We'll just never know if that problem would have fixed itself.
It turns out a plunger did the same thing.
But he kept doing it, didn't he?
No, but...
Yes, he did.
My favorite story before we start this story...
Hold up. Matter of fact, didn't when he came back to visit, he did it then too?
No, but he complained to you about...
plunging the toilet.
In the military, like for the army. And people kept leaving the toilet plugged. And they were like... And he was like, somebody needs to unplug this. And they were like, go do it.
It was him. And he just didn't have a gnome who was unplunging the toilet.
Yeah.
Turns out all that toilet paper, we know where it went.
Mm-hmm. At 8:30 in the morning, a neighbor hears a loud sound coming from the house next door. Not a crash, not something you can explain away. She stops, and then she sees it. Smoke pouring out of the Barsi home. Thick, fast, and immediate. And in that moment, before anyone says it aloud, she already knows. He finally did it. When you start to look at a case like this, it's almost hard to reconcile the beginning with the end. It starts with 2 people, Joseph and Maria, both originally from Hungary, both coming to the United States in search of something better. That part of the story isn't unusual. It's something a lot of families share. You leave one life behind, hoping the next one will be safer, more stable, more secure. Joseph worked construction and plumbing. Maria worked as a waitress. Hard jobs, long hours, just trying to build something from the ground up. At some point in that process, they do come together, which I thought was kind of crazy that they're both from Hungary. They both immigrated to the United States, but not together.
Why is that crazy?
Well, I just thought it was interesting that they both immigrated here, found each other in California, and at some point in that process, they come together. There's not a lot of details on how they even met. I figured he was a construction worker, and she was a waitress, and he met her that way. But what we do know is that they were already an established couple by the time their daughter, Judith Eva Barsi, was born June 6th, 1978 in Los Angeles. And when Judith comes into the world, she immediately stands out. From a very young age, there's something noticeable about her. She's expressive, she's comfortable in front of people, and she naturally gravitates towards performing. And that's what leads her to being discovered at a skating rink in 1983. Judith was just 5 years old. She was a child, just being a child, moving through her day when someone notices her and sees potential. In that moment, something so ordinary ends up changing the entire trajectory of her life. From there, she begins working. Judith appears in her first role as Kimberly McDonald in Fatal Vision at 5 years old. She then starts booking commercials, small roles, and eventually she moves into more consistent work. Voice acting becomes one of the areas where she really stands out. And as her career grows, so does her visibility. Thanks to Maria, her mother, managing and Judith's success in Hollywood, her parents were able to purchase a 3-bedroom home in West Hills, Los Angeles. But while all that success is happening, while Judith is stepping into a career that most adults would struggle to navigate, the environment at home begins to shift. And this is where the story takes on a different tone. Success in a child's life doesn't always feel like success in the home that it exists in, especially when jealousy starts to enter the picture. At first, it's subtle. Joseph is often unemployed, and over time, he starts relying more and more on Judith's income. At the same time, he becomes increasingly involved in her career, offering opinions, inserting himself into decisions, staying close to every aspect of her work. On the surface, that might not seem unusual. Parents often take an interest in their child's activities. But this begins to feel different. What looks like involvement slowly becomes control. And alongside that shift, alcohol becomes a constant in the home. Joseph's mood grows unpredictable, and small moments turn volatile. Calm doesn't always stay calm. Living in that kind of environment doesn't just make you notice the change, you adapt to it. You think ahead, you choose your words carefully, you move differently, you learn to walk on eggshells. And that kind of shift changes everything. By the mid to late 1980s, this shift is no longer subtle. The home is unstable. Arguments no longer stay contained. They carry throughout the house, loud enough that neighbors can hear. Over time, these arguments settle into a pattern: control, heavy drinking, emotional volatility, eventually physical violence. Judith lives in the middle of all of it. She has to move between school, auditions, and film sets, performing and functioning only to return home where the tone can shift without warning. At one point, she confides in a friend. This little girl says, "I'm afraid to go home. My daddy is drunk every day, and I know he wants to kill my mother." The stress begins to show in small ways, small, troubling ways. Judith starts plucking out her eyelashes, and when those are all gone, she begins plucking out her cat's whiskers.
Oh.
Yeah.
What? Oh. Like she has a pet?
Yeah. Ew. You're disgusting.
Just making sure I'm tracking right. I don't know what kind of censoring you're doing.
Maria, her mother, is navigating the same environment, trying to make decisions while under that constant threat. Joseph has threatened to kill her, he's threatened to kill Judith, and at times he's threatened to kill them both and or burn the house down. And those threats are not confined to the walls of their home. Neighbors have heard them, friends have heard them, family hears them over and over again. He has threatened Judith and Maria more than 100 times. Police are called on multiple occasions, but nothing changes. The pattern continues. Joseph's drinking escalates, and so does his violence. By the mid-1980s, he's arrested on 3 separate occasions for drinking and driving, but these incidents do nothing to change the dynamic at the home.
Well, and it's the 80s.
Yeah. Joseph's behavior becomes more dangerous. Before a trip to the Bahamas for Jaws the Revenge.
What?
For the movie.
Oh, for the movie. Got it.
He holds a knife to Judith's throat in front of Maria and says, "If you don't come back, I will cut your throat."
Well, what?
That's what he did to his daughter.
Why would I come back? If I'm not here, you can't cut my throat.
Well, unfortunately, as we've seen in toxic relationships, people don't think like that. Still, the cycle continues. In December of 1986, Maria finally goes to the police to report the abuse and threats. But when the officers say they see no visible signs of abuse, she decides not to press charges. Once again, nothing changes. I figured when she went to the police, they're like, well, you're not beaten black and blue, nothing's broken, so you can choose to press.
Yeah, but it's going to be hard to stick to it.
And it's just going to get thrown out. So she's just like, fine, I guess. Well, once again, nothing changes. During another outburst in the kitchen, Joseph starts throwing pots and pans, striking Judith in the face, causing her little nose to bleed.
I'm a little impressed you knew where to find the pots.
Those around Maria notice. They ask questions, they express concern, and eventually Maria says it out loud. If she leaves, he will come after them, because he's already said he would. Through all this stress and abuse, Judith is still working her little hiney off. By the time she's starting the 4th grade, so around 9 or 10, in 1988, she has starred in more than 24 shows and movies, plus been in more than 70 commercials. She was earning $100,000 a year. That's nearly $300,000 today. For 10 years old?
Well, she wasn't seeing that. But a question, because who's managing her? Because I would imagine a good chunk of that's going there, too.
I think it was like 10 or 15% to her manager, her agent.
That's pretty low.
Yeah. From the outside, it still looks like success, but the pressure doesn't stay contained. It builds, and eventually it spills over. In May of 1988, during an audition, Judith breaks down. Not just upset, not just overwhelmed. She is completely inconsolable. She sobs uncontrollably, unable to speak, unable to continue. In that moment, something shifts. What had been hidden behind performances and appearances is suddenly visible to someone outside the home. Her agent pushes for help. A child psychiatrist becomes involved. And that moment, when Judith can no longer hold it together, becomes the moment everything is finally reported. Child Protective Services is notified of the abuse in the household. When Maria speaks to the social worker, she doesn't describe the situation as a possibility or even just a fear. She speaks about it as something she believes is going to happen. She tells the social worker her husband is going to kill her. And this time, she says she's leaving. I feel like in that moment, she knew she had to choose between keeping her daughter safe, well, in general, keeping her daughter in the household, or her husband. Maria explains that she's already taking steps. She rented an apartment and she's planning to file for a divorce. She's going to create distance between herself, Judith, and József. For a moment, it seems like this could be the turning point. The case is dropped with the expectation that she's going to follow through, that she will leave and that things will finally change. But leaving is...
But they don't.
But leaving is not...
And I'm going to call it that he's going to find out she's got a plan, and now his plans are going to escalate.
You're so smart. But leaving is not simple. Leaving is dangerous. And in the end, Maria hesitates. Not because she doesn't want to leave, but because she believes that trying to leave may be the very thing that triggers everything he's been threatening to do. And by this point, it's no longer a question of if something's going to happen, just when. That's where things are going to sit for those final days. Not quiet, not stable, not improving, but just sitting right there with the people around them fully aware that there's something wrong and not getting better. And this is the part of the story that's critical to understand, not because of one specific moment, but because of the pattern of escalation. And when you follow that pattern to its conclusion, you eventually reach 8:30 a.m. on July 25th, 1988. It's early enough that people are outside, moving through their normal routines. Nothing unusual about the start of the day. A neighbor is out in her yard when she hears it.
Pow.
A loud sound, sharp, sudden, not something you ignore. It stops her, and almost immediately she turns and looks towards the Barsi home. She sees smoke, not a little, enough to know immediately that something is wrong. Not a question, not something small. Smoke was billowing out of the house next door. She drops what she's doing and runs inside to call 911. And as she's moving, her mind goes straight to what she's already been told. He's finally done it. Smoke continues to rise from the house. While that call is happening, the situation next door is already getting worse. Smoke continues to build, pushing out of the house, thick enough that other neighbors start to react too. Another man moves towards the house. He grabs a garden hose, trying to get close enough to do something, to do anything. But when he reaches the back and pulls open the sliding glass door, the smoke hits him almost immediately. It's too much. It fills the doorway. It pours out thick and immediate, filling the space, making it impossible to move forward. There's no getting inside. There's no way to push through it to see what's happening beyond that point. He can't go any further because the fire has already taken hold. By the time the firefighters arrive, the fire has already taken over the interior of the home. They move in, contain what they can, and once they're able to get inside, the scene shifts from a fire response to search and rescue. They knew they were looking for Judith, Maria, and József. They find Maria in the hallway. They find Judith in her bed. Both mother and daughter were dead, but not from the fire or from the smoke. Both of them had been shot once in the head. Their bodies had been doused in gasoline before the fire was started. In the garage, they find József Barsi. He's alone, on the floor, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his head.
Little bitch.
Right? A .32 caliber pistol is nearby, along with the gas can. What happened inside the home did not begin with the fire. József Barsi killed his wife and daughter, set the house on fire, and then took his own life. Judith Eva Barsi and her mother, Maria Agnes Barsi, were later buried side by side at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills. The exact location of Joseph's grave is unknown, and it's believed that he was buried in an unmarked grave, with no public record identifying where his remains were placed.
Good.
Judith was just 10 years old. She began her Hollywood career at 5, and in the short time she was here, she built a career most people never come close to achieving, appearing in more than 70 commercials, movie roles, and guest roles on TV. She appeared in Jaws: The Revenge. She was the voice of Ducky in Land Before Time. Yep, yep, yep. And she was Anne Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven. Judith had already recorded all her lines for All Dogs Go to Heaven before she died. When the cast and crew returned to finish the film, they had to continue working with her voice, with the voice tracks.
Oh.
And hearing her and seeing scene after scene, knowing that she was already gone, for many of them, it was overwhelming. Recording sessions would stop because people simply couldn't hold it together. The movie nearly didn't come out. And anybody that hasn't seen the movie, it is a kind of dark movie because the dog Charlie, who is Burt Reynolds, does die in it. But when it comes to the final scene, Burt Reynolds is recording his lines on a closed set, and he had minimal crew there because they had to keep their shit together. His character Charlie was saying goodbye to Judith's character Anne Marie. His lines, it wasn't just to say goodbye as his character, but in a way, it was a way to say goodbye to Judith.
Charlie.
Oh.
Yeah. It's me. How you feeling, kid?
Okay, how are you?
Well, I come to say goodbye.
Where are you going?
Just on a little trip. Listen, Squeaker, I want you to do something for me, all right?
Uh-huh.
I want you to take care of Itchy. Just while I'm gone. You got a home now, and he doesn't have anybody.
Don't worry, Charlie, I will.
Great. Well, goodbye, little buddy.
Oh, Charlie, I'll miss you.
Yeah. I'll miss you too, Squeaker. Now you go to sleep.
Charlie, will I ever see you again?
Sure. Sure you will, kid. Goodbyes aren't forever.
Then, goodbye, Charlie. I love you.
So that clip, that wasn't just acting for Burt Reynolds. That was him actually being choked up. And her voice was something so full of life and innocence, it continued on even after she was gone. The way people who worked with her described how difficult it was to complete the film, especially when her recordings were played back. For many of them, it was a constant reminder of who she was and what had been lost. And that's what makes this case so difficult to sit with. Because nothing about its existence is isolated. It was not one moment or one decision. It was a pattern that built over time. Control, instability, violence, continuing without interruption, even as people around them began to recognize that something was wrong. When you look back at the beginning of the story, you do not see the tragedy yet. You see a child with talent, with opportunity, with a future that seemed wide open. From the outside, everything looked like it was falling into place. But inside the home, the reality was very different. And when you follow that pattern all the way to the end, this is where it leads. There's also a detail that's difficult to ignore. One of the roles people still remember the most is Ducky from Land Before Time. That character feels light, joyful, and completely innocent. It's the kind of voice that sticks with people because it sounds untouched by anything dark.
Mine is Ducky. Yep, that is what it is. Yep, yep, yep.
Now, mind you, it's been a while since I've seen either movie, but I didn't realize they were the same person.
Me either. That voice was recorded while she was living in the middle of everything volatile inside that home. When Judith and Maria were buried, they too were placed in unmarked graves, and it wasn't until 2004, 16 years later, that headstones were finally installed, funded by fans who had not forgotten Judith. I don't know why that made me as angry as it did, because without throwing like Burt Reynolds under the bus, which I guess I kind of just did, how much is a headstone that's no one could do that for them? They're nothing with her estate, no money in her account, her agent. Nobody thought that this little girl and her mother deserved.
Well, who was in charge of the things?
I don't know. It looked like that they just got buried and they were in unmarked graves for 16 years.
Well, I was gonna say of like, I don't know, if I was working with somebody and they died, I wouldn't be thinking about their headstone.
No, but did they not have a funeral?
Yeah, but so you generally, like, when they're buried, they don't necessarily have the headstone because sometimes if you order it, it might take a while. And since their deaths were sudden,
Yeah.
I don't feel like it'd be abnormal for her not to have a headstone.
Right. I get that.
So that's where I would think of that. And then I also think people they might not visit her grave even after if they attended the funeral.
Yeah.
Of just, they're thinking of her, but they're not going over there. And unless you're the one handling her estate and all the things, and whose responsibility was it to even be in charge of that? So I can't say I would blame them, because it would never even cross my mind to think who's paying for her headstone, because again, it was sudden,
Yeah, that's true.
like, the headstone being on there was like the least of the things. Everybody, I imagine, were just horrified that it happened and going through the motions to get there.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't take away from who she was or what she accomplished, but it does say something about how easily even the most visible lives can be overlooked once the attention fades. Judith was more than a role, more than a voice, and more than a case. She was a child whose life was still unfolding, even as everything around her was becoming more unstable. And in the end, what defines this case is not just how it ended, but everything that led up to it. Not one moment, but the pattern. Everyone heard it, no one stopped it. And also, I found this extremely disturbing. Well, I found it a disturbing side note. The very first acting job that Judith had when she was 5 was in a mini series called Fatal Vision. Judith played.
Never heard of it.
You Were a Baby.
So I've seen Pretty Woman.
Well, this was a mini series. How many mini series from the 80s have you gone back and watched?
0.
Well, Judith played a daughter who was murdered by her father in that mini series. Pretty dark.
Well, she also played a dinosaur.
Yeah, but
They're extinct.
you've been sick a real long time.
And that's the cold, naked truth.
Well, that's all I've got on József Barsi or the murder of Maria and Judith Barsi. I just thought it was crazy because I didn't realize that both roles were played by the same little girl, or that she was killed by her father. All Dogs Go to Heaven and Land Before Time didn't come out until after she already died. All Dogs Go to Heaven came out 18 months after she had been killed, which I thought that was extra sad because since she was kind of new into doing the voice acting, she didn't even get to see herself as a little cartoon dinosaur,
Yeah. I always just assumed they were adults that did that.
I did too.
Because, like, on Rugrats, Chucky is a grown-ass woman.
Right. I didn't know that it was a little tiny girl. And she was really small for her age. She was able to play, when she was in Fatal Vision, she was 5, but she was the size of a 3-year-old. Like, she was a tiny little thing. So she was able to play a lot younger roles.
Probably because she wasn't being fed.
She was being fed. And then they started her on hormones. I did read one article that was kind of messed up because since she was so small, they started her on hormones. But then in that same article, they said that due to the stress, she started gaining weight. I was like, it couldn't possibly have been the fact that they started a little girl going through stress on hormone therapy, could it? Also, I thought, like, not to throw my boy under the bus, but he had to get testosterone shots. They wouldn't start those till he was 16. So starting a small child on hormone therapy seems crazy.
It's hard to know what all was going on with her to know what, like, I really don't know anything about her to know what treatment would or would not be necessary.
Yeah.
But it was the 80s.
Yeah, that's what I chalked it up to as well. It was the 80s and it was Hollywood. But like the directors and stuff, they said that she was amazing to work with and she took direction insanely well. And the fact that she did look younger than she was, it made it really easy because she understood how to take direction and looked younger versus having a young child try to act.
Yeah. So I Googled it for pediatric endocrinology, that typically they'll start hormones if growth issues are noticed early enough, like severe issues, because they're not puberty hormones. It's generally identifying the deficits early for growth conditions in infancy or toddler age for severe issues. But more commonly, it's between 3 and 10 when those things are addressed. Conditions like Turner syndrome, apparently, were extremely slow growth compared to peers. But starting too late, like closer to puberty or after, it makes it an issue for developing normal. But generally, it's done with bone scans, blood tests, and growth tracking over time to determine if therapy is necessary. So between 4 and 6 is when they will start to identify deficits or a child with true GH deficiency. But waiting until puberty or around there seems to be an issue with development.
I gotcha.
Which is interesting, because I would be thinking, but I wonder if she had any of those syndromes. I don't recognize her from Jaws. I mean, I haven't seen Jaws in a hot minute either.
It's Jaws the Revenge. It's the 4th Jaws.
I don't know that I saw it then.
But this is her mom and dad. She's a cute little girl. She has an impressive, like if you go through the movies and stuff she was in. She was on Cheers. She was on Growing Pains. She's doing lots of movies. Anyway, that's all I've got.
Well, it was real extra sad. I feel like all child actors have a tragic end.
Yeah, bare minimum a tragic childhood.
Yeah, we'll call it Van Gogh syndrome. In order to be an artist, you have to have some sort of tragedy or mental health issue. That's why we're not successful. And that is the cold naked truth.
You've been sick a real long time.
Another truth. Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.